back. I'm Maxwell McGee, and we are live, and we are going to be checking out a demo of DarkSpore for the PC. And to help me do that, I'm here with Paul, not Matt, Paul Sotosanti,
That's right.
lead designer on the game. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Now, before we dive right in, I've been asked to remind you folks at home to send us your questions through the chat or through Twitter. Whatever you like, I will be checking it out periodically throughout the demo. So let's dive right in. What is DarkSpore all about?
So first off, DarkSpore is not an expansion pack or not a sequel to Spore. It's its own game. What it is an online sci-fi action RPG. Two things that kind of set it apart from the rest of the genre. The first one is collection. So in traditional RPGs, you take one hero, you're going to level him up to level 40, level 100, you keep that one guy. In DarkSpore, you actually collect up to 100 different heroes, and there's 25 unique heroes with 4 variants of each, and you'll take them and put them into squads of 3, bring them down to the planet, and then switch between them as the gameplay kind of dictates. So it's kind of like having 3 lives, and you can bring maybe a healer, maybe a DPS, different things like that. And then the other thing is customization. So because we took the creature editor from Spore, which kind of everybody agrees was the most successful part of that game, we're able to offer an unprecedented level of customization in this genre. So you can take your heroes and, in a traditional RPG, you would get a shoulder pad and it goes in your shoulder. You can't move it around at all. In DarkSpore, you can take that, put it anywhere on your hero, and you can really express yourself and make these really interesting heroes that you wouldn't be able to do in any other game.
All right, very cool. So tell us about what we are taking a look at here. I understand we're looking at some co-op action.
Exactly. So we have 2 people playing right now on our beta live. There are a couple thousand people on the beta right now, and these are some of the developers. So they're in a level right now. This is a level called Verdanth. There are 5 different Genesis types in the game, and they sort of inform what the different heroes are like, what the different enemies are like, and in this case, what the planet is like. So this is what we call a biogenesis planet. So you're going to see a lot of life, forests, as you can see. It's a very lush planet. And we've got 2 heroes playing right now. We've got Arachna, and we've got Goliath. And if you look down in the lower right of the screen, you can see that there are 3 different heroes that they have access to. And they're actually able to switch whenever they want to one of those other heroes. So
Ice Midget from the chat over here wants to know, can you tell us exactly how many heroes are in the game? Or maybe give us a round figure?
Yeah, totally. There's 100 different heroes. 25 of those are completely unique. They have completely different looks and completely different abilities from all the other ones. And then there's 4 variants of each. So as you play through the game, you'll unlock different variants of the heroes that allow you to get a different ability. They have a different aesthetic appearance. And they also have different stats that they start with.
So can you tell us about the different classes of heroes? There's like robot guys and zombie dudes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's 5 Genesis types. So this is a bioplanet, like I said. That hero up there, Arachna, in the center of the screen, is a spider hero. She's a Necro class, or Necro type hero. So Necro is all about death, draining life from enemies, that sort of thing. And then the robot that you see with him is Cybergenesis. So that's one of the things we really like about being sci-fi, is that we can do a lot of different things with the heroes. We can do a lot of things that a fantasy game can't do. We can kind of, anything we could imagine, we could put into the game. And that was really awesome. Quantum Genesis is another type that sort of deals with space-time, deals with gravity, pulling enemies back and forth and stopping time.
So in addition to cooperative play, you can also do PvP in the game, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So you can play co-op 4-player in PvE, and then for PvP we have 1v1 and 2v2 battles. Yeah, you can queue up. There's a matchmaker, so you can join up with a party and matchmake against other people 2v2, or you can just go in and fight solo. The PvP is really interesting because you can switch between 3 different heroes, which actually gives a lot of play to the strategy in the game.
And then the heroes, they have their own squad abilities, so you want to set up combos between all these different heroes.
Yeah, exactly. If you look up at the screen when we show it again, there's actually the 3 abilities on the right. Those are your squad abilities, and those are actually granted to the squad through the different heroes that you put into it. So because he has a plasma hero on the left of his squad, he gets that ability, Plasma Wreath, in the 3 slot, and any of his heroes can use that. So you can actually set up different combos. There's a lot of sort of decisions even before you get into the game about which different heroes you want to put into your squad, and that has a huge effect on how the game's going to play out.
So let's talk about the enemies and the enemy placement. It's going to be different every time depending on if you're playing solo or if you're playing cooperative.
Yeah,
You've got
exactly.
an AI director type thing going on.
Exactly. We were really inspired by Left 4 Dead. That's a game where they only have a few different maps, but people keep playing over and over again. And we thought a lot about doing random map generation, but at the end of the day, we decided that let's just make the maps look really awesome. Let's allow our artists to do everything they want to do, make maps that look really good, and then do what really is going to mix up the gameplay, which is make the enemies random. So every time you go to a level, you're going to get a new selection of 6 different enemies that you'll be fighting out of the 96 different enemies that we have in the game. There's tons and tons of different combinations. And then the AI director will place them in the level differently depending on how you're doing. And they'll scale up and down depending on how many players you have.
Now, if I remember correctly, you guys have like a system where players can build their own enemies using like the Spore creature and then submit them and then possibly have them featured in the game. Is that something y'all are still doing?
Yeah, exactly. We run contests when we can. Actually, we had what we call the DarkSpore Day event recently where we invited some press to come out to the studio, and we had a contest where they designed some NPCs. We're going to be putting those into the game shortly. But yeah, we wanted to involve the Spore community in the game and allow them to sort of contribute to the game. So.
All right, very cool. It looks like we're taking a look at the Spore creature editor right now. Can you tell us more about what we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who's played Spore will recognize this, although it's been given a facelift. You know, this is the DarkSpore hero editor, we call it. So right now, we're editing Blitz. He's one of our Plasmagenesis heroes, which I didn't talk about, but that's kind of like a fire lightning type thing. So right now we're putting on a weapon. And again, so you've got 6 different slots on your hero. You have your weapon, your feet, and your hands. And those are fixed. So you put a weapon on, it's going to go on your wrist. Or wherever that hero has his weapon. But if you put on those other 3 slots, the offense, defense, utility, you have complete freedom over where you want to put them. So you can
So I
move them
can't just
around.
have like a giant spear sticking straight out of my chest
Yeah,
or anything like that.
we had to make the animations work, right? We can't animate weapons that could be sticking anywhere. You know, we did want to draw back on the creativity a little bit just to allow our animators.
Creative limitations.
Exactly, and we find that giving people those constraints actually allows them to be almost more creative and allows them to create things that they're really proud of. You know, in Spore, when we give you a blob, it's actually pretty tough to take that and make something awesome if you're not creative and make something that you're happy to show off to your friends. But in DarkSpore, we give you something that's already amazing, you know, already looks really good, and then you're just building on that. So no matter what, people are really excited to show their stuff off, and people in the beta have already made these incredible heroes. So you can see right now he's in the painting. So he's looking at the skin coat. You can change the color of that skin coat. You can select different patterns that will paint onto your guy. Now he's looking at the skin detail. So you can change the color of his parts and sort of the details, the spikes on his back, and also the patterns of those. So again, tons of customization that's available in this game. Really unprecedented in the genre. I don't think there's any action RPG out there that has this level of customization.
So Decius in the chat wants to know how you guys are handling loot in the game. Are you going to be collecting it while you're out in the wild, or do you get loot at the end of the match? How does that work?
Actually, a little of both. So when you're playing in the game, you know, every action RPG player loves getting loot off guys. They want to kill a guy, see that loot explode out. We totally have that. So as you're playing, you'll collect loot off the ground, and then if you're playing 4-player, the loot is actually automatically randomly distributed. So everybody gets a roll on every item. You know, it's a little different than
So you don't have to get in big fights with your friends
Exactly.
over who got the fancy spear or
Exactly,
whatnot.
exactly. It's a little different than other RPGs in that everybody can kind of use everything, right? You know, in Diablo, if you're a sorceress and spear drops, you can't use that. Just give it to your friend. Who cares? But in this game, everybody can unlock Blitz. Everybody can unlock Goliath. So every item is kind of has a use for every player. So we wanted to just not let people not worry about that. Get that out of the gameplay and let it just handle itself. And then at the end of the level, you're actually rewarded bonus loot when you finish a level. And we have a sort of risk versus reward system. So each time you finish a level, you're presented with, here, you've unlocked a level 21 piece of loot. But then you're given a choice. You can continue on to a harder level, and then you'll get 2 level 22 pieces of loot, or you can cash out and just take the 1. However, if you fail, continue on and fail, you lose everything. So, you know, you keep your DNA, you keep your XP, and you keep the items you found in the level, but you lose all that bonus stuff. So we really, you know, there's been kind of a trend in games these days where dying, you know, isn't a big deal. It's just kind of like people don't care because dying doesn't matter, so they just kind of run in. We really wanted there to be some adrenaline in this game, some intensity. So dying has a cost. You have to think about, you know, what your strategy is going to be. Can you take on that next level? Discuss with your friends. Think about which squad you want to bring.
So let me ask you, how did you guys decide to move from like Spore, which was this big sort of high concept, multifaceted strategy game, over to DarkSpore, which is more of a hack and slash action game? Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, it's a bit of a twist for Maxis to be making an action RPG game, no question. It's basically a function of who was there on the team after Spore. There was 3 core guys, Thomas Fu, Stephen Lim, and Tom Bowie, who all play these sorts of games. They play action RPGs. They love playing games with each other, with their friends. And they looked at Spore and they said, what's the best part of Spore? You know, what sort of thing should we use in our next game? And it was definitely the creature editor. You know, everybody agrees the creature editor was the best part of Spore. And so they took that and they were like, what genre should we make? And then they thought RPG, that would be awesome. You know, customization, you know, allow yourself to be completely unique, completely different from every other hero out there. So basically, the short story is they made a game that they wanted to play. You know, they were super excited about it, and then they brought people onto the team. They hired on some Diablo 3 people who worked at Blizzard, and they hired me from Wizards of the Coast. I used to work on Magic the Gathering, so I have a lot of experience with, you know, taking a lot of different diverse elements and then putting them into combinations.
A giant system and having it all make sense
exactly,
and balance
right?
out a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly, balancing all that stuff.
So EJ902 from the chat wants to know how the items and different aesthetic options you have for your character, how are those going to impact their gameplay? Yeah,
so we use a loot system that's sort of inspired by a little bit by Diablo, a little bit by World of Warcraft, a little bit by Borderlands. You know, we see a lot of good games with good loot systems out there. We took a little bit of each of those. But basically, those items that you pick up in the level, they have stats on them. We've got strength, dex, and mind are your sort of core stats. And those lead into crit, you know, dodge, all the things you would sort of expect, resist, health and power is sort of our equivalent of mana. And so every item that you put on your hero is going to affect those core stats. So you can totally change the gameplay of your hero by putting on different items. You can make a tank hero. You can make a hero that, you know, crits all the time. And we have 3 different classes of heroes as well. So these guys are both playing Ravagers right now. Ravagers are our dex-based heroes. They benefit the most from dex. We also have Sentinels. Those are kind of your tank-based heroes. And we also have Tempests, who are sort of your mind-based heroes. In addition, in the editor, we actually have the concept of detail slots, which is you can actually take items that you found. So there's a problem in a lot of RPGs where you'll find an item, it'll be really awesome, you know, you'll love it, you'll put it on, and you love the look of it, and then you find another item that's better than that, and it's like, oh, now I have to take off the item.
All of a sudden, you don't get to have your giant
exactly,
fancy
you got those crazy
anymore.
saw blades on your shoulders or whatever, and and now you got to take them off, and that sucks. So what we did was we came with the concept of detail items, which you can strip the stats off of a part and then put it into a detail slot. And now you never have a reason to take it off again because it doesn't matter for your stats. Keep that on forever. So if you find wings that you really love, keep those on for the entire lifetime of your hero. You can move them around between your heroes. And again, we really wanted like creativity to not come first. You know, gameplay totally matters too. The stats are really important, but to actually service both of those needs.
So let's set up sort of the story for DarkSpore. I understand it has something to do with the progenitors and a wild science experiment gone awry.
Yeah, exactly. So there's an ancient race known as the progenitors, and they were sort of experimenting with DNA, and they created something called exponential DNA, which was super powerful, but of course, as always happens in these things, it became unstable. And
something's got to go wrong.
Exactly. So there's a guy named Xylan, he's the corruptor, and he just basically became mad, you know, went insane and started taking over the galaxy with this power, this exponential DNA. He injected himself with it. And everybody else couldn't stop him, but they didn't want to use exponential DNA to stop him because that would just create more of the same. So they actually ended up going into cryosleep. And you went to sleep for a few thousand years until the computers actually managed to stabilize eDNA. And then they wake you up, and now that you're using that stabilized DNA to create your own army of heroes, genetically enhanced heroes, to take on Xylan, the corruptor. And in the campaign, you can play the campaign single player. You can play it co-op. You can go back and forth between the two. And there's movies. You know, each time you go to a new planet, you'll get a movie telling you about how the story is moving along. And yeah, you can play through with your friends.
So I understand this game has been out in beta for a while now. The release is right around the corner. What has the response been like from the beta? What sort of feedback have you guys gotten? We've
been really thrilled with the beta, actually. You know, yeah, like I said, we've had a few thousand people playing constantly. Right now we're in open beta, so anybody can jump on. We actually delayed the launch of the game by a month because of the beta feedback. People had a lot of things that they wanted to fix. We really wanted to address those concerns. So we actually pushed back the launch, and we've put in a bunch of things that people have asked for. We've addressed replayability a little bit. You know, we've always built this game from the ground up for replayability. We have people playing for 50 or 100 hours in the beta, even though there's a low cap. But even to go further with that, we've added a randomized objective system. So each time you play a level, there's 5 different objectives. In the beginning, it was just fixed. You know, it was always the same 5. So people would write guides, and they were like, this is how you do it. And then people would get all gold medals. And we love that people are writing guides, but it was a little too easy for them. So now we mix it up, and each time you play, you've got different objectives. Now there's a little bit more to figure out. Each time you go into a level, you kind of have to think about what you want to do that time.
All right, Paul. Well, I've got one more question for you. Can you remind the kids at home when DarkSpore is coming out?
Yeah, absolutely. So DarkSpore comes out next Tuesday. It's April 26th. So we're excited.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for stopping by and chatting with us.